In a cabinet meeting today, President Trump addressed the federal response to the floods. He praised Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem for her efforts. Noem said response teams have been, quote, unified since the flooding broke out. Both Trump and Noem have said the strength of those floods were unprecedented.
And this is the kind of thing that built up so fast. And it's happened 2 or 3 times before over the years, but not to this extent.
Let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, what else are we hearing from the White House about the role it's playing in the response to this tragedy? We know that President Trump is expected to go down there to Texas later on this week.
Yeah, that's right. He told reporters that he would be in Texas with First Lady Melania Trump to see the damage in person this Friday. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem also signaled that she would be part of that trip. She also talked about what she saw from talking to family members, survivors on the ground. And Noem really made sure to note that the federal government, FEMA, was providing funding and support, but was not necessarily managing the rescue and recovery operations as they have had before, as the federal government is kind of trying to remove themselves from that role, or at least decrease that role as they lean on state and local officials instead to lead those efforts. And it's a continuation of what President Trump kind of has said and signaled about FEMA. And when asked about, whether he still wants to get rid of FEMA, yesterday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt made sure to note that Americans want help in these times of need, whether that comes from the state or federal government. And she said, quote, that's a policy discussion that will continue.
And Aaron, turning now to tariffs, President Trump has announced new ones for more than a dozen countries. Can you tell us more about that? And is there a sense that this is perhaps just leverage in order to make a deal, and how successful could that be?
Yeah, it started yesterday where letters were sent to Japan and South Korea, in addition to 12 other countries, kind of determining the tariff rate for these countries. It's important to note all of these letters have the same language in that should companies from these countries move to the U.S., manufacture inside the U.S., they could see a removal or decrease of these tariffs from the U.S. It is also leverage in the sense that it could kickstart negotiations that have stalled between the U.S. and other countries. We're seeing that sort of language from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. And you heard President Trump in that cabinet meeting seem to signal that the door is still open for a fuller trade deal with the bloc of European countries in the European Union. So it's buying themselves a little bit more time, especially with that August 1st deadline for implementing that the president today clarified is the firm deadline in terms of when these tariffs could go into effect.
On another note, Aaron, President Trump also says the U.S. will resume sending weapons to Ukraine after a brief pause from the Pentagon. What's behind the change in course?
Yeah, you started to see this a little bit last week after the president had a call with Russian President Putin. And asked about how that call went, he showed some frustration that there was not much progress made when it comes to ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. Today, President Trump said that Putin is, quote, not treating human beings right, repeated how he's not happy with him, says the U.S. gets, quote, a lot of BS thrown at us by Putin. And it's just a change in the sense that comes after recent Russian strikes on Ukrainian cities and civilians, which President Trump has, voiced his disappointment with. And the strikes also came hours after that call between Putin and Trump last week. So he has obviously felt slighted about this and is taking a pretty pro-Ukraine stance so far, at least in this development when it comes to sending them weapons.
All right, Aaron, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.